Hey guys, ever take pictures that look like this? Or maybe this? Don't worry, you're definitely not alone, because I've been there too. Welcome back to my channel. Looking back at some of my attempts with my first camera, which is a Canon 60D, just reminds me how many mistakes I made buying my first one. Seriously, buying the wrong camera is a huge waste of money. So today I'm going to show you those rookie errors and give you the essential knowledge so you can avoid making the wrong purchase and take the right shot with the first camera. Hopefully, this video will save you a lot of frustration as well as your wallet. Before we jump into the specs, I'd like to share some real-life oops regret moments that I've experienced. My buddy Mike got really into photography and dropped almost $5,000 on a professional grade Canon EOS R5 with a fancy 70 to 200mm lens. After several trips with this camera, he realized what he really wants was something compact like a Sony ZV-E10 for traveling vlogging. That expensive setup now collects dust in his closet while he uses a 900 setup that actually meets his needs. Then there's Jack, my colleague who loves taking photos of indoor basketball. He initially bought a Nikon D3300, a great beginner camera. However, he quickly found that in a dim lit gym, the photos became very grainy and unusable because the camera struggled at high ISO settings. Disappointed with the results and having to sell his D3300 at a loss, Mark then switched to Fujifilm X-T5. This camera handles high ISOs much better, allowing him to capture clear, less noisy images even in the challenging lighting conditions of indoor sports. See the light bulb going off? Before you spend a single hard-earned dollar, you've got to nail down the big question: what am I actually trying to shoot? Honestly, if I could just tell you the perfect camera right now, definitely I would. But it's not that simple. There's some crucial info you absolutely need to know first. By the time you are done with this video, you have a solid understanding of these 5 questions. What budget and megapixels make sense for your first camera? Why is ISO performance important for you to choose a camera? Why is sensor size a big deal when you are tweaking your photos later? What's the real difference between power shots, DSLRs, and mirrorless cameras? Why you should not ignore the ergonomics of your first camera? We've got a lot to cover to get you started right, so I have had to break this video into 2 episodes to make it easier to digest. Let's start with budget. The first thing to consider when choosing a camera is your budget. Let me give a full picture of camera options from the really affordable to the top tier. At entry level, prices are from $400 to $800. Canon Rebel T8i, great for beginners, intuitive menu, 24 megapixels. Nikon D3500, exceptional battery life, helpful guide mode. Sony A6000, compact, fast autofocus, still relevant in the market. Entry-level cameras have everything you need to take great photos. It may lack weather sealing, have slower autofocus, and fewer physical controls. At mid-range, prices start from $800 to $1,500. Canon 90D, excellent 32.5 megapixel with APS-C sensor, great for sports. Nikon Z50, compact mirrorless with great handling, adaptable to f-mount lenses. Sony A6600, great autofocus, in-body stabilization. Mid-range models add weather sealing, better autofocus system, more customizable controls, and offer better video capabilities. This is a sweet spot for enthusiasts. For high-end camera, price goes from $1,500 to $2,500. Canon EOS R, full frame, great color science, adapts to EF lenses. Nikon Z6 II, excellent all-rounder, great low-light performance. Sony A7 IV, incredible autofocus, great for hybrid shooters. Fujifilm X-T5, 40 megapixel, nostalgic controls. High-end consumer models introduce full-frame sensors or advanced APS-C sensors, professional-grade autofocus, and build quality that can withstand daily professional use. For professional use, the price can go up to $2,500 and above. Canon EOS R5, 45 megapixels, 8K video, best-in-class autofocus. Nikon Z7 II, 45.7 megapixels, excellent dynamic range for landscape. Sony Alpha 7 R5, 61 megapixel resolution monster, AI-powered autofocus. Professional models are designed to push the boundaries with specialized features like ultra-high resolution, advanced video capabilities, or AI autofocus system. Now, if you are just starting out, please keep this in mind. Do not overspend on your first camera. As a beginner, you probably don't know exactly what features or focal length you want to focus when you eventually upgrade. You could easily drop a ton of cash on a camera that doesn't really meet your needs down the road. That's why I also highly recommend checking out the used market before you really figure out what you prefer. You can actually find some fantastic deals on used camera from reputable sites. I've gone through tons of reviews myself, and I want to give you 2 used camera sites that stand out. The first one is KEH, which gives you a solid 180-day warranty. And the other one is MPB, which shows you the actual pictures of the camera you are going to get. On this site, you are looking at potentially saving around 30 to 40% compared to buying a new one. Number 2, let's talk about image quality, especially megapixels. You'll often see this number thrown around when you're looking at camera specs. Fundamentally, the megapixels of a digital camera tell you how many tiny little dots called pixels that the camera's sensor uses to capture an image. And generally, more megapixels mean sharper images. Let me explain it with a real-world example. Imagine you are capturing this wide sweeping landscape photo, perhaps a stunning mountain and lake view. Let's see how different megapixels affect it. With a 16 megapixel camera capturing this view, the overall scene looks good. But when you zoom into a group of trees, you might notice that individual trunks start to appear softer and might visually blend together somewhat, especially those deeper in the woods. The separation isn't perfectly crisp. Now, let's look at the same scene captured with a 45 megapixel camera. When you examine this image closely or zoom in digitally, you will find incredible clarity. You can clearly distinguish each individual tree trunk, even separating ones that are standing quite close together or are further back. The definition is noticeably sharper compared to the 16 megapixel version. Perhaps you look at your wide shot and realize there's a much stronger, more focused composition within it. Maybe focusing tightly on just one dramatic mountain peak, or isolating an interesting pattern in the cloud or foregrounds. With the 45 megapixel file, you have so much data that you can crop significantly. Let's say using only 25% to 30% of the original image area to create this entirely new composition. So, when should you consider high megapixels? Below are the 4 scenarios that you need to take megapixels into consideration. If you crop heavily, wildlife and sports photographers often need to crop significantly. If you print large photos, landscape photographers making gallery prints. If you need flexibility in post-processing, commercial photographers need to reframe and crop photos for retouching purposes. If you shoot for stock photography, agencies often have requirements for minimum resolutions. Other than these scenarios, anything above 20 megapixels is probably overkill for your daily use. Remember that high megapixel cameras also have some disadvantages. They require more storage space, need faster memory cards, demand more processing power from your computer, and may have slower burst shooting rates. So, don't get caught up in the megapixel race, unless you have a specific need for those extra pixels. Number 3. Let's dive into ISO performance. In photography, ISO refers to how sensitive your camera is to light. Along with shutter speed and aperture, ISO is one of the 3 big settings in photography. Now, this is important to know. ISO is controlled by the camera body itself, not the lens. So it's definitely something to think about when you are picking out a camera. You can think of ISO like the brightness control on your phone. When it's dark, you turn up the brightness to see better. Cameras do the same. Boosting ISO makes the sensor more sensitive to light. But there's a trade-off. Higher ISO equals more noise. That might sound a little technical. Let's say this in action. Imagine you are in a dimly lit concert, trying to capture the perfect shot. You take the photo, but it's either too dark or a blurry mess. That's where ISO comes in. Starting from ISO 100, clean, sharp, but pretty dark. Then ISO 800, still clean, a bit lighter with minimal noise. Move to ISO 1600, a little grain, but still acceptable, much brighter. At ISO 3200, noticeable noise creeping in, and everything is visible in terms of brightness. It's true that boosting your camera's ISO brightens photos in dim conditions, but it also usually adds unwanted noise or graininess. So you might wonder, why do photographers even need cameras that can shoot at high ISOs? One major reason boils down to shutter speed, especially when light is low. To capture sharp photos and avoid blur from either your subject moving or your own hand shaking, you often need a faster shutter speed. This is where high ISO becomes essential. At high ISOs, as the sensor is more sensitive, it needs less time, meaning a faster shutter speed to gather enough light for a good exposure. There's a direct relationship between these settings: shutter speed, ISO, aperture, and light conditions. All these factors work together. Increasing your ISO allows you to use a faster shutter speed in the same light conditions, assuming your aperture stays the same. This ability to trade higher ISO for a faster shutter speed is crucial. For example, let's say in low light, your settings are ISO 100 and your required shutter speed is 1 out of 30 of a second. That's pretty slow, easily leading to motion blur. But if you increase your ISO to 3200, you could potentially shoot at 1 out of 500 of a second instead. That much faster speed is great for freezing action and getting sharp photos even when it's dark. That power to achieve faster shutter speeds in low light is exactly why photographers value cameras with strong high ISO performance, even if it means dealing with a bit more noise. Remember, the ability to use high ISO effectively is key for low light situations and fast shutter speeds. Therefore, if those scenarios sound like yours, prioritize cameras reviewed well for their low noise levels and detail retention at high ISOs. That's it for this episode. Hopefully, you now have a better grasp on some of the key things to think about when you are in the market for your first camera, like what you want to shoot and the basics of image quality and ISO. Don't worry, we are not done yet. In the next episode, we are going to get into camera types, comparing DSLRs and mirrorless camera. We will also explore sensor sizes and what they mean for your photography. And I will even talk about ergonomics, how the camera feels to use. If you found this episode helpful, please give it a thumb up and let me know in the comments below if you have any questions. Of course, please subscribe also so you will be ready for the next episode. Thanks for watching this one. I will see you in the next one.